first of all, I want to confess up front, I know very little about Ukraine and even Russia. And that's embarrassing because actually my ancestry on my father's side largely comes from Ukraine and Russia. I should know more, but I don't. And I'm not going to pretend to. And there has been some excellent discussion of late about the reflexive tendency of people, especially on Twitter, to feel like they have to say something about what's taking place in Ukraine because it's the thing of the moment. Mm-hmm. And so you've got all kinds of people who should know better who are saying perfectly stupid things just so that they haven't been silent, right? And so anyway, I want to avoid that trap. I don't feel compelled. You know, I am very much a student on the question of Ukraine. And I will say among the delightful discoveries of this horrifying chapter in which realities of the 20th century that you and I remember have come rushing back into the 21st century in a most unwelcome way. One of the great discoveries is Konstantin Kisin's excellent exploration of this. He is somebody who has relatives.
He's half of the trigonometry duo.
Half of trigonometry. And there's an excellent interview where Francis basically interviews Konstantin, who who speaks Russian, who I believe emigrated from Russia, has family in Ukraine, both Russian separatist family and Russian and Ukrainian nationalist family. He's got family members on both sides of the divide. And anyway, he goes through this as somebody who does understand the deep issues here. Yeah. And it's an amazing, heartbreaking, and very beautiful exploration of things that does connect certain dots. Okay. One of the things it connects is something that you and I have been saying. You know, obviously we didn't start in the public eye talking about COVID. You and I came to public attention over the early and very dramatic eruption of wokeness at the college where we used to teach at Evergreen. And one of the things that we said very regularly, I must have said it 100 times, is you can't do this. Right? If you do this with civilization, the ship isn't going to sink right away. Yeah. But what is going to happen is you are going to open the door to every enemy, right? Because you're too busy fooling around with phony hazards and all of this other nonsense. And anyway, Zach, will you show, I sent Konstantin's tweet from, I think, this morning. Konstantin's perspective here is very sobering. Effectively, what he says is, look, I told you this was going to happen. It wasn't even difficult, right? Now, what he says in his tweet this morning is, there is a narrative emerging about people like me who predicted the Russian invasion and the broader geopolitical reordering we are now seeing, right? And effectively, what he points to is something you and I find familiar from this other landscape, right? Which is people saying, okay, you got it right, but for the wrong reasons, right? You may have predicted it correctly, but you're still wrong. And to me... Because we can't afford for you to be right. Or we can't afford to embolden you, to empower you. It is the thing... You're the wrong guy. The salespeople, this is the thing they fear most, is that history will demonstrate... the wrong guy. He's the wrong guy. Yeah, now, here's the thing. Just like we're the wrong guys. It is totally possible to make a correct prediction for the wrong reasons. Sure. That happens. What is not possible is a track record, right? The more times you make a correct prediction that other people are not making, the more likely it is that you have an underlying model that actually does reveal something about reality that others are not seeing. So this idea that people are going to go after Konstantin, and he does deliver in this tweet thread, which I encourage people to go look at, evidence that in fact, no. He did not get this right by luck, right? He understood what was going to happen and why. He tried to warn people and they didn't listen. And now it's happened. And his basic points, very sobering in the video he and Francis put out. He basically says, look, you have brought a particular part of history to an end through your indifference. You have played around with an essential feature of the world, and now the predictable collapse has come, and you now live in a different world, and that's your own doing, right? And it's, I believe, completely accurate. But what I want to bring these things together you and I studied biology. We studied evolution. That allows us to see certain stuff. But we also studied the philosophy of science, which, our audience, I don't know what they think about our invoking the philosophy of science, but I want to remind people. The point is, the philosophy of science is in its own way kind of a dry topic, right? It doesn't have a lot of punch. It's not like squirrels and hummingbirds and other fun stuff, right? It's dry. But the point is, getting the philosophy of science right is the difference between actually doing science and doing pseudoscience. And so what I want to say about Konstantin's point here is that if you got something wrong and somebody else predicted it correctly, you do not get to raise the objection that they got it right for the wrong reason, right? Even if it's true, that is not your place. The only people who are in a position to critique somebody who predicted correctly are people who also predicted correctly, which is a tiny, tiny subset, right? So my point is, look.
I'm not sure I agree with this.
Really?
Well, I think I don't like the idea of actually it's not your place to critique here. I obviously see a ton of bad faith critique out there, a ton, and it's and it more often than not is actually destructive of communication and of learning what is actually true. But I guess at the moment, I'm very averse to any kind of gatekeeping that looks gameable.
Well, I'm not really talking about gatekeeping. Okay. I'm not saying if you got it wrong that you need to not speak. What I'm saying is you are not in a position to go after somebody who got it right, right? You can say, look, I think that was incorrect, and here's where I think the error is. It's fine to say whatever you want. Mm-hmm. But to actually try to pull the rug out from under somebody who correctly predicted, right, is, to me, it is a violation of the underlying philosophy of science, where the real point is, look, I don't care who you are. I don't care what degree you do or don't have. I don't care whether you are officially understood to be insightful, expert, or anything. What I care about is whether or not you are capable of seeing things ahead. And if you are capable of seeing things ahead in this realm, as far as I'm concerned, I'm listening. And if you're not, I don't care that you have the advanced degree and the fancy position and that you show up in the New York Times. The point is, you either have predictive power or you don't. Mm-hmm. And at this moment, we ought to be listening to Konstantin on the question of Ukraine, because he correctly warned us. Mm-hmm. That warning was not heeded, and we now live in a worse world that could have been avoided if we did listen. Well, on that, I agree. And, one of the things he says in this video that, again, we'll link to repeatedly is there is an absence of leadership. There is an absence of leadership. And, he not entirely, but part of his argument is, and this is not his language at all, but basically, I think, the entire world understands Putin to be this strong man. And what does a strong man respect is other people like him, and they don't need to be operating in bad faith or through terrible actions. But a strong man respects strength and is going to respond to strength and is not going to respond to what we've been doing in the West. And, yes. Is not going to stand down and wait for us to get our act together before he makes his strongman bullying, horrifying moves on the planet. He's going to take advantage of the moment when we are being idiots. Of course he is. Right. Of course he is. And, of course we see as of today, military games by China off of Taiwan. How would this not have been the case? And so what we have been doing in the West is not only not tending our strength, but we have been broadcasting weakness. Right. We have been broadcasting foolishness and frivolity and effectively an autoimmune disorder.